In 2016, you, the American people, you made history. You elected as president a fighter, a deal maker, a disruptor. You sent a leader to the White House who was clearly unafraid to dismantle the status quo in Washington, D.C., the swamp, the sewer, and also somebody that is now, in 2 years, we see he fights to keep his promises and get things done that he said he'd get done, frankly, come hell or high water. Tonight, what you're witnessing is Donald Trump doing whatever it takes to fulfill his promises. More importantly, this is about protecting the lives of the American people and securing the country on our borders. Many lawmakers, especially Democrats, ignored the crisis at our southern border. They said it's manufactured. 1 month ago, Speaker Pelosi vowed that Congress wouldn't spend more than $1 on any border wall. It was immoral. As it turns out, she's a little off. Take a look.
I went through Congress. I made a deal. I got almost $1.4 billion when I wasn't supposed to get $1. Not $1. He's not going to get $1. Well, I got $1.4 billion, but I'm not happy with it.
Nor am I. But the president's right. He got $1.375 billion for the wall and a bill that tripled the funding for barriers on the southern border over the previous budget. And it's only 7 months, this budget. It killed so-called poison pills like any amnesty. It's not in the bill for illegals. No pathway to citizenship. No limit on ICE detentions. In fact, instead of a limit, this bill funds 5,000 more beds for illegal immigrant detention. And remember all the far-left, radical, socialist Democrats calling for ICE to be abolished? Well, this bill actually includes a historic funding increase for ICE, including money for an additional 600 highly needed professional officers. Now, still, you heard the president. He's not happy, nor should anybody be happy, because $1.375 billion for a wall is not enough. And it's why I have called this bill garbage from the very beginning. And it's why the president is now officially, as of today, declaring the national emergency that he's been telegraphing to the world he's going to do. Take a look.
So I'm going to be signing a national emergency. And what we really want to do is simple. It's not like it's complicated. It's very simple. We want to stop drugs from coming into our country. We want to stop criminals and gangs from coming into our country. It's an invasion. We have an invasion of drugs and criminals coming into our country that we stop, but it's very hard to stop. With a wall, it would be very easy. So I think that we will be very successful in court.
I believe that as well. Now, let's break down exactly what this means and why this plan will ultimately be very successful. As the president declares this national emergency, the administration will gain access to roughly $8 billion. The president will be able to use the $1.375 billion from the budget compromise, so progress continues straight through the rest of the fiscal year, which is till October. $600 million from the Treasury Department's drug forfeiture fund, $2.5 billion from the Department of Defense's drug interdiction program, an additional $3.6 billion from the Department of Defense's military construction account. And he knows the Democrats, as we predicted, they're going to go judge shopping. They're going to challenge this constitutional executive action in court. But their efforts, ultimately, they will come up short. One constitutional scholar after another agrees with us. The president is standing on firm legal ground. Let's look at U.S. code. Oh, law passed by Congress, signed into law. It explicitly states, quote, construction of roads and fences, oh, that would be a barrier, a wall, and installation of lighting to block drug smuggling corridors across international boundaries of the United States. Well, the president also has standing based on U.S. code. Right there, you can see it, 2808. That allows construction projects for national security. And that's not even all. Since 1978, a whopping 58 national emergencies have been declared by various presidents, starting with Jimmy Carter. And guess what? 31 of those national emergency declarations are still in effect today. Former President Obama, he declared 10 national emergencies, including one that countered the rise in crime from a deadly Mexican cartel. Simply put, there is major legal, legislative, and constitutional precedents for this national emergency when it comes to stopping drugs, gangs, cartels, trafficking, and everything else, and all the security risks to Americans at the border as a result of an open border. Remember, 300 Americans are dying weekly from heroin, 90% of which is trafficked across our southern border. In 2017, more than 70,000 Americans died from drug overdoses. Excuse me, is that a manufactured crisis? Last year, fentanyl trafficking across the southern border shot up a whopping 122%. In Arizona alone, fentanyl deaths have tripled since 2015. And sadly, drug carnage, well, that's just one part of the crisis. In just the past 2 years, 4,000 criminal aliens were arrested for homicide, 30,000 for sex crimes, 100,000 for violent assaults. That's a 2-year period. Last year alone, 800 gang members apprehended at the border, a 50% increase from 2017. And today, the president had a very powerful message to one, well, fake news hack who tried to claim that this is all just a manufactured crisis. Same talking point the media uses as their best friends in the Democratic Party. Take a look.
What do you say to your critics who say that you are creating a national emergency, that you're concocting a national emergency here in order to get your wall because you couldn't get it through other ways?
Moms, what do you think? Do you think I'm creating something? Ask these incredible women who lost their daughters and their sons. Okay? Because your question is a very political question, because you have an agenda. You're CNN. You're fake news.
Ouch. Maybe Jim ought to walk over. Maybe talk to the angel moms and dads that we have on this show. Made him look really weak, bad, pathetic, heartless, and looks like when he's forced to face brave angel moms and dads who've lived through hell, pain and suffering that none of us can imagine, he didn't want to talk to them. Now, tonight, no matter what you hear from Democrats or the hate Trump media, the wall is getting built. The president, the fighter, the disruptor, the deal maker, tenacious, unrelenting, is keeping his promises. But also, he's winning. Are you sick of winning yet? The American people are the real winners here. This is a huge win. Forget the president. Put him aside for a minute. This is a win for the country. This is a win for you and your families and our safety and our security. Which brings us tonight to our Hannity Watch on what is the abusively biased hate Trump media. Now, recently, the media's echo chamber, they've been spreading some pretty unbelievable fake news about the president and me and our relationship. Why they're obsessed with this, I don't know. Take a look.
This is a president who is terrified of angering his base, and I think he is concerned. I can imagine him being on the phone with Lou Dobbs and Sean Hannity and telling him, okay, I have to do this because he's afraid of losing this news cycle to hacks like Sean Hannity and Lou Dobbs and Ann Coulter. He has set a precedent that will haunt the Republican Party for decades, if not for generations.
2014, Mike Pence and 2014 Republicans battled then President Obama in public and in court over similar actions. But 2019 Mike Pence and many 2019 Republicans are already saying, thank you, Sean Hannity, may I have another?
All right, let me just say up front, the president nor anybody in the White House ever called to calm me down, whatever that means. And I'll also say this, with all due respect to all of you guys over there, it's really cracking me up here. I'm thrilled with it because I've been calling for secure borders and build the wall first for a long time. By the way, for all of you geniuses that are overpaid in the hate Trump media and kind of lazy, let me explain what I do for a living. I am a talk show host. In other words, I'm a member of the press. We're like the whole newspaper on this show. I can produce hours and hours of radio and television where I do straight news. We do tons of investigative reporting you're too lazy to do or too biased to do. Remember, we were the only show, one of the only shows that vetted Obama, Frank Marshall Davis, and Acorn and Alinsky, and, oh, yeah, let's not forget the Church of GD America, Black Liberation Theology. Remember our coverage of Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn? Remember all of that? We also had some serious investigations on this program into the Duke lacrosse scandal. I actually met with some of the kids and the families. Baltimore, Maryland, we were right. You all in the media were wrong. UVA, Richard Jewell, the scourge of gang violence in Chicago. We put up the names on the show. The man-made drought, Delta smelt in California. We investigated what your kids are up to in spring break. Yeah, we do investigative reporting. We do straight news as a talk show host. And also, we also did our 2-year investigation into the deep state, and we have the evidence that you never paid attention to about what was an attempted coup on the president of the United States, where they let one candidate free. in an effort to sabotage the other. And, of course, like every newspaper, I said, we're like the full news. We give opinion. I don't hide that I am a registered conservative. We even do gossip occasionally in sports. 2 nights ago, we had on Tim Tebow. You see, our First Amendment, freedom of the press, well, part of the free press, you can be a talk show host and do all of those things. It covers many different and unique roles for the press. In doing so, like other so-called journalists, I use sources all the time. I work the phones daily to get information, to do reporting, investigation, so I can give my audience the best information that you guys aren't giving them. And I'll never, ever, by the way, for all you that speculate, I will never confirm, not even deny, who my sources are, who I talk to, who I don't talk to, or even if I talk to people alone. What you have in the media right now is obsession. They got blinders on, and they've got this prism in which they see Donald Trump. Lazy, overpaid people in the hate Trump media, so blinded by their hatred and rage for Donald Trump, they need to get their own sources of information instead of falsely speculating about mine. Now, here's a simple truth. Nobody in the media has ever come close to describing the relationship that I had with the president. That goes back well over 2 decades. And by the way, if one exists, I wouldn't tell you anyway. All right, now to end all fake news reports on how I accurately predicted exactly what the president would do on the border. He didn't tell me. It's simple. I paid attention to all his public comments. He said it over and over and over again. I heard him. You refused to hear him. Remember when he said, I will add whatever I have to add? What do you think he meant? Remember when he actually said many times, I'm looking at the national emergency seriously? He kept saying these things repeatedly. And what those of you in the fake news industry don't seem to understand, the president does listen to other points of view. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's pretty amazing. All of you can't figure out that he makes up his own mind. And it's not hard to understand what he's going to do, because what he has been doing for the last 2 years, what he's been saying over the last week, is usually what he ends up doing. Now, by the way, for the record, I'll say this in all honesty, if the president listened to me, he would have stopped tweeting back in 2016, or at least tweeted less. Because me and a bunch of other people told him, you got to stop. But I got to admit, in retrospect, I actually think he was right to keep doing this, maybe 5% less. Because what he's doing is bypassing the abusive press that is offered, people that hate him every day, and he's getting his message directly to the American people, which, as you can see, in a media landscape full of conspiracy theories, hatred, fake news, is now more important than ever before. Take, for example, this report from Newsbusters. Look at this. All the big 3 networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, they went wild with their hysteria, collusion, coverage, one story that turns out to be false after another. They dedicated over 2,200 minutes of airtime, just the 3 networks. They aired and found 0 seconds minutes for available airtime, when the bipartisan Senate report that found no collusion with Russia this week. They didn't cover it at all, because then they'd have to admit they were wrong. And I happen to like the fighter that is in the White House. I do like the man who fights, tenacious, unrelenting, and fights to keep his campaign promises. It's refreshing. It's energizing to watch him go down the list and see all the success for the forgotten men and women that voted for him in 2016. The policies he advocated for in his campaign and he's now delivering on, well, to be very honest, I have been supporting. These are things I publicly stated support for, most of them, for 30 years on radio, 23 years right here on the Fox News channel. Why? Because conservatism works. It works every time it's applied. Just like I predicted Obama would fail. 13 million more Americans on food stamps, 8 million more in poverty. Look at the president's positive, record-breaking results on the economy alone. New trade policies. We're making more money. More opportunities for Americans, 600,000 manufacturing jobs, 5.3 million new jobs. Yeah, I like those policies, and it's worth fighting for those policies. All right, we'll have more on this later. But first, we do have to turn to our Hannity Watch on the Deep State in light of yesterday's big news, huge bombshell revelation surrounding disgraced, fired FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe. Now, last night we laid out the entire case. 2016, small group, high-ranking, unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats, they abused their power in such a way to try to rig the 2016 election in favor of one candidate, Hillary Clinton, over another candidate, Donald Trump. They allowed their chosen candidate, Hillary Clinton, to stay in the race by clearing her of all charges before they even investigated it. Well, things that no other American could ever get away with. Trust me, if you have subpoenaed emails, you better not delete them. You better not acid wash your hard drive and bust up your devices. Now, in July of 2016, Comey interviewed Hillary. He's the guy that said we're smelly Walmart voters. He's the guy that said Hillary should win 100 million to 0. Anyway, Comey and Strzok and others, they decided to give her a pass. The fix was in. And they didn't prosecute Clinton for what were obvious felony violations of the Espionage Act, including mishandling top secret, classified intelligence on that unsecured private server in a mom-and-pop shop bathroom closet. They also chose not to prosecute her over the biggest slam-dunk obstruction of justice charges when she deleted, acid-washed thousands of subpoenaed emails with bleach spit and beat up her phones with a hammer and ripped out the SIM cards. Any other American would have been tried and they would have been charged with felonies, but not Hillary Clinton. That's what they did, as they abused power. And then also in July of 2016, right after they give her that free pass that keeps her in the presidential election, the same exact people then use Hillary Clinton's bought and paid for phony Russian dirty dossier to open up an investigation into the Trump campaign. They used the same unverified garbage, to spy on a Trump campaign associate, and they were all warned it was unverified and that Hillary paid for it, and it was never corroborated or verified, and that Steele hated Hillary Clinton. By the way, a lot of it's since been debunked. Those known lies were used to repeatedly, 4 separate occasions, commit fraud on FISA courts and literally deny a fellow American of their constitutional rights. And then they used it later. Remember the insurance policy to illegally attempt a coup, again, using the Russian lies. They knew they were Russian lies. They were briefed that they were Russian lies to unseat the president that they didn't like, the candidate they didn't like, the one who had smelly Walmart voters following him. After a months-long investigation, meaning almost 9 months, Lisa Page, James Comey, others had even admitted there's no evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. But that didn't stop this very same group of unaccountable, unelected bureaucrats from plotting to remove a duly elected president from office. Watch this.
There were meetings at the Justice Department in which it was discussed whether the vice president and a majority of the cabinet could be brought together to remove the president of the United States under the 25th Amendment.